Seeing through the ocular lines, lens aligns the screen adaptations of flux over lines. Centers lines, of course, centers that communicates the setting and configuration system all through travels, geometric line, geological, and geographical systems. The geometric lines of screen adaptations is truly understand how to get a gravitational lock line. This communication setting to a convergent system with copy and paste. Now we have to understand how to embed it in implantation setting and grounds of surface. How to start to see through the eye-line divisions into your noculus center lines of travel. That process indicates lines of flux. Now we have to understand how to process this because it's processed in our systems, lines and settings. We have your remote control, but you have to know how to go past the eye-line division into the process of outer space, set lines of screens. This all communicates the system off the travel. So we're getting a gravity lock line into a gravitational pull. Now you have to really understand how to balance that out through gravity line centers into its gravitational system into spectacles that process into line course centers into the speculation in crossing line signals, location system off the travel. In this case, process position. Okay, calculate modified travels and direction. All right, one line connection settings, on sequence patterns and operation lines of surface. Okay. Okay, so you have to stand the grounds of 3 centers of travel. Start with that position. All right. Then you have to create the platform and travel. Okay, just through the ground set as a platform into embedded system. Process that indication setting. And then you have to basically bounce it out in that position location of the system, all through tractions. All right. Once you bounce that out, it comes into a square box into rectangle screen location and settings. Process indication is over flux over screen. Now sometimes you have to truly understand how to modify the patterns and line card centers of communication setting. Signature lines of grounds and 4 lines of flux and set lines of travel. Okay, so once you have that set up in line connection system, you bring it into the provision lines and outline centers of 3 circuits and set calculation screen locations, right? And then you get in position lines of 2 window frames, 3 centers of travel communications and direction. And then you go from that line centers and you go to 3 signals, that's lines of flux over lines of grounds into yards and rotation lines of surface location and travel. Directing ground centers, flush over 3 centers of travel, direct lines and link and process lines and webbing and screen adaptations of flux. Process indicates the system, webbing system lines of center, online sequence location setting and travel. The reciprocal line loads, line course centers and circulation system to set lines of travel communications. Okay, and then you come into this position location of travel. Okay, in this position location of travel, seen in the 4 line settings and a webbing sequence and location of grounds of service and travel communications. Okay, so that's how you start seeing through the eye-line division. Okay, so center lines of windows, 3 screens of adaptation of service, process of indication setting, and right over left, left over right. Setting process of indication system travels, right? Then you go into the window frames and travel communications and sending interactions. Okay, so you're seeing the grounds, the powers, and the atmospheres all at once. Okay, gravitation, panels operation, ceiling line rotation, 3 centers of settings of travel. So that's 3 lines of circuits, 3 lines of measure, 3 lines of scales. Okay, process line, all line signals, location through pi. Pi generation lines, course centers of 3 angles of plus and rotation lines of flux. Process indicates the setting, and that communication system all through tractions, all through directions. All right, so that's how you start to see the grounds, the center position lines of power, generation lines in the eye windows, process lines of set course centers into single locations and webbing, grounds, powers, and atmospheres, right? Now, once you get into that, you have to coordinate through the pi line. The pi generates the screen lines adaptation system all through setting to Fibonacci line square roots, the process lines and how we see through projection. How you see light and dark at the same time. So when you're basically closing your eyes, what's happening right now? You're processing an image, the image is processing you, you're seeing lines of void, void is seeing you, you're seeing the avatar of you, seeing the reflections of you, set position, refraction, not reflection. It's a process of the communication system all through travel. So right away, you turn on the light. Okay, lights are on now, it's at 0, 1, process lines, set positions, light and dark is coming in, right? Faster, faster, faster. Start blinking, like this. Okay, so as you're blinking, your body's going through different frames, different frames, different frames, each second, each minute, each hour, right? In a clocking foundation system. So as soon as you bring your hand in, right? Bring it this way, bring it that way, do it this way, do it that way, go up, go down, go across, create it this way, understand this way, 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 all at once. So what you're doing when you're slowing down your space, your mind's adapting speed and acceleration of Mach. At the process location setting, you're slowing down space and time, right? And when you just keep slowing, you slow it down, slow it down, slow it down. Your mind starts moving like this. So it's changing all different angles, how it's seeing things all at once, over light, over dark, and dark over light. So this is where it comes into perception, how we see 70-30, 60-40, 80-20 through our light codes and our dark coding system, to our light webbing, to our dark webbing, line position location system. You start up in 1/10 of a frame that processes 90% of frame set locations at conversion. It sets the communication system all through transitions through your eye divisions. The process of communication system. So when you're looking at things, you're looking always on 3 settings, 3 circles, and 3 rotation of grounds as track location. Okay? So you're constantly seeing the Orion's belt and 3 signals and grounds. Grounds, powers, and atmospheres, right? Data port 1, data port 2, and data port 3 are portals of communication. 79 division lines, that's 3 portals and set lines of communication coming in conversion system all at once and travel. Okay, so that's 3 portals coming into one setting, 1 traction, 1 division. Okay, all at once. Okay, but first you have to understand how to create through structure design line. Okay, and once you see that, then you see the portals coming in position, all set and travel. Okay, now when you have the portals in sequence, you have 3 lines of signals. Then you go through generation lines of clocking center and rotation system that correlates the time, measure, and scale through observation. Direct and redirect in signals and location setting all through travel. Okay, see all at once in line position to its systems, right? So when you get in that position, the travels in point lines of graph comes with 3 convergence setting and travel. Okay, 3 platforms, right? So that's how you start seeing everything through a holographic structure of design. Okay, and then it comes towards you in set position through light and through dark, coming to you through attractions and set locations. Okay, but there's an eye sequence you don't want to bypass in that position. All right, so that's how you're seeing this, and that's how it's coming to you, right? Same with any lines of different line directions, northwest, south, and east. But as it comes in, you start to see the hologram of everything you see in 3 directions in 1 setting, 1 volume. 1 volume masses everything in travel. Okay, in subtractions. Okay, very powerful stuff, guys. How you see a gravitation, how you see the windows, and how you see the ceiling all at once. That's 3 provision lines of settings through pi, right? Through its holographic structure that you're bringing in through its intelligence. Very, very powerful stuff, okay? But you can't see that until you let go of your lines of all communications of emotion, okay? First, you have to set up the gravitation, you have to set up the powers and the atmospheres, lines, screen locations of gridding. And that position is copy and paste, enabled, in line position default, channels, lines, screen adaptations of flux, add core sounds, implementation setting, and that process communication setting and travel. So this basically gets you a true understanding of how this all works through its technology by bringing in holographic streaming, direct location of its intelligence, all through objects, places, or things in traction coming at you. Okay, very powerful stuff. And you can see it in all different angles. Okay. Now, when you get to concepts of 3 online centers, puts lines of 4 signals and grounds of surface that process communication system all through travels in 1 directions, online connections all at once in set position. Okay, very powerful stuff. And then you bring it in through calculations of what you created. So you're bringing it in. Okay, you're bringing in the structures. You see it through holographic. You see it through the ground lines of security. 3 centers, 3 provisions, 3 sight lines, 3 travels, 3 correlations of communications. You see the hologram. Okay? And as it comes closer to you, it's identifying your space and time. Now, this is in a clock and screen lamp adaptation setting that changes the particle line screen adaptations of use their service. Now, into that comes into the line signals of conception that process your system, how you use that, all levels of mind interpretation and mind of inception itself, right? But you're lowering things in that positions, right? See the structure, see the design. It's hologram, okay? It's coming closer to you. But you have to understand how to create the set positions to its system all through your eye division. Okay, it needs a platform. Right over left, left over right. So you're crossing signals, you're crossing bridging, you're going through dimensional scales and communication lines of dimensional seeds. The dimensional seeds is a communication system all through tractions that have direct line link that processes your system, how you use it through alpha and beta. That communication lines of delta heading that crosses location systems all through theta, all through operation lines of sequence, right? 3 containers coming at you at 1. 2 containers coming at you at 1. 1 container coming at you at 1, right? All at once through pi, guys. And that's how you start to see, right? Things coming at you. See, up close. And that's you in the center, looking at everything coming at you, right? That's the balance. If it's not balanced, it's off balance because you're adding emotion. You change the course lines of time frame, that change course center of the particle acceleration system all through setting. Process the indications offline centers. Your structure of design is offsetting, like this. It's offsetting, so it's not coming towards you. It's off position. So it's not on its platform of right signal location setting. Okay? So you got to make sure you're balancing all 3 signals. And once it comes in provision of you, the travels and point graphs come into past, present, future, centric calculations. So you have to identify if it's in its past, present, and future, because it can be anywhere at once, but its past, present, and future is the acceleration system. So you're finally getting to see the intelligence of what it is in provision, all through observation. Provision is observation, observation, provision, right? So once you truly understand how to see that, it puts it all together. Okay? But when you see it up close, it's fantastic stuff. Okay? And everything through a ceiling and rotation. Coming at you in all different directions, all at once. And you're just standing there. You're just standing there. So you're in the game, just looking around. You haven't moved yet. And you're seeing it in all directions. Okay? That's how you perceive location setting oculars and understand the oculus, of course, centers of travel that puts on position location in your perceptual location, circulation, rotations, how you're seeing 3 lines of communication in 3 volumes in 1. 3 volumes in 1 all at once through the eye line. Okay? All right, so once you understand that, you have to stand light over dark, dark over light. That comes in your webbing system. So make sure when you're getting in position how you want to see the intelligence through a hologram, make sure you're only using 1/10 of a frame of dark and 90% light. And then you can go to over lines of sequence that process communication on 0 gravity, process lines of 0.1 or 0.1. Then you can move forward and add frames in that communication setting that change the configuration setting of time. Now, what you have to understand is how to modify that position location, how you see through all calculation, all through tractions, all through locations, right? But that's what happens if it's off signal. It's not a balance. Each line signal has to be balanced with each other. It's an eye division location that processes its position eye setting. So it has to be balanced in all lines, all frames, all communications, all at once, in the same frequencies that travel. Okay? Very simple to understand that. Right? Very powerful stuff, just through eye looking. Okay, so in that position locations, now you have to understand how to use your projectors. Process lines of settings of light, process line location lines of dark, right? Yin and yang in process, yin and yang in process. Set communication lines of question over mark, question over downline cross location setting, question line communication setting, question line upline center rotation. Question mark over lines of center operator lines of sequence, precipitals lines of crossing angles of cross referencing. Directing eye line signals, location setting and conversion system, all through tractions, all through reductions, all through location, high position location measure, and the scale communication lines and high position location is all calculate, modify. Brain convergence system, all through tractions. Okay? Now, how to the eye line centers, the circulatory line connection system of online centers on surf location system and travel. Crosses and angles, process line that indicates system over hairline centers and process communication in that tractions, right? That communicates the grounds, powers, and atmospheres. There is position of the holographic structure. How you're seeing, right? So as you're seeing it, it comes in a platform. As you're seeing it, it comes in a power generator. As you see it, it comes into its atmospheres. As you see it, it comes into its highways, and so on and so on and so on. So you're always seeing a holographic structure and its attraction. Okay, through the eye division lines. Okay. Now, in that communication system, you have to understand how a projector works, how you go through Fibonacci one way and Fibonacci the other way in sequence. It's that travel. Okay. So your processing lines of flux over lines over 6, process line connection lines over 9, line position of 12, and 24 lines of cycles in center operation. Setting course centers, eye contact, process line center line connection setting, configures the setting, working with flux, compatibility, and position location lines, setting over lines and line position of 9, process line connection lines over 6, location system and calculations. So that's yin and yang, process line, energetic dome screen locations. That's how you see the provision. There's the dome, right? So in that position lines the high centers, you change the pi correlations of time frame, change the clock line, zeros line, and rotation setting, nine line circles, and location system and traction. Directing ground centers calculation, you have a platform online center, rotation lines, ground center, set position operation lines, torical fields, process line that indicates the system, all through balance, and your pre-cortex location of design. Okay, it's very complicated. I see set position through its line divisions and its torical fields and travel communication. Okay. But you have to understand how to communicate it and understand it through set position, direct and redirect. So in that position area stand 6 and 9 and 9 and 6, that communicates the system, position, location of Fibonacci, that processes all levels, how you see that line communication to its surface, that gets you in communication to its settings. The operation line centers process the indication of the system all through travel. So what you have to start to indicate is truly understand how to see through a hologram, how a hologram sees you in provision. And it's much understanding that what you have to identify is how to see through the eye lines and 2 circles and 1 rotations. One going that way, one going this way, as they come together in a flux over lines in a universal screen location setting. And that indication system comes through its flux, capacitor, and set traction, right? Which is your calculation setting, a flux over lines into your Rhine's belt, in 3 centers, and 3 circles and rotation. Okay, that process line connection setting. So you got 2 division lines of platforms, 3 line course centers line communication, that's 5 line settings. Process lines indicates any clock line, rotation, service, location system, all through traction. Directing ground centers, the center operation lines opens all signals. So the Fibonacci comes closer, in position of right, comes closer, in provisions of left and travel, all right? The process lines how you see the sun and how you see the moon in rotation, service, and traction. Directing ground centers line communication lines, high position of flux line communication to ground, position location of flux over line, pattern over recognition of time frame communication lines of travel. Directing ground centers high lines of sequence, the cataracts, course centers of floaters coming in lines of sequence location system and calculations. Directing ground centers, online centers comes into window frame, box frame, triangulation, communication lines of time frame, communication lines of measure and scale. Sets communication high centers, inside rotation, surface, and traction. Very complicated how to travel through the eyes and how the eyes travel through you. Okay, so setting up portals, a 2-line sequence of 3 grounds of setting the surface, over cross-line angles and line communication setting and travel. Directing inside, in-line condition setting, there's your graph of communication. Okay? Then you apply the division in your settings, and you see yourself on the simulation board. Okay? That's how you see the eye line in that direction. So start with here, you add the vision lines. There's the cortex lines, the division of cortex line screen adaptation in your system, which you're creating through online image location setting and tractions. Directing inside lines, laser tractions, indirect state locations. Okay? Bring it in and set position to its sequence, location of pattern. Okay, so that's what you're visiting through your eye lines, and you travel through the simulation. Okay? You can change the coloration of time measure, change the metaphors of light metaphor, and line condition setting through its intelligent information system all through travel, direct line communication, and ground set and line communication, right? Change formations. There's you on another board frame. It's that position location measure. Okay? And remember, it's all through the eye line division. Okay, very powerful stuff. So you can change your eye line sequence and all line direct locations. Okay, how you bring yourself in cortex. Now, the mystical cortex is very powerful stuff because it processes you how to see your imagination core. It opens all communication sitting and line direct signal locations in that position, how you see everything through dimensional space and time. How you're bringing things into dimensional lines of position of its board itself. But that's how it's set up the eye line. Okay. All right. So understanding that setting location of this sequence and how it comes in all cross-referencing, how you create it through hologram, and how you see through all line division locations all at once. Very powerful stuff when you bring it in. See? That's what you're bringing in. Right? But they all have to be at the same frequency. If they're not, you're adding emotion. All right? So no motion when you're traveling, no motion when you're picking things up, no motion when you're in magnetic force, no motion when you're discharge or line signals location system all through travel. Directing links, setting lines of high center location, setting in high positions. Okay, so to really understand what you understand how to use your projector and how your eyes are going this way and your eyes are going that way, you're bringing in light and dark and light together. So as you're sleeping, you're going into position of seeing light and dark at the same time. So you're flashing your charge position locations in positions, right? So what you're doing is you're going through flickering patterns, pattern recognition of timelines, a strategy. Your communications in position location, your body is going through frames per second, per mile, per square, per root, per triangulation, per position locations that onlines as force recognition of pattern recognition of time frame. Sets lines of Y factors over line, E factors over screen, triangulation line condition setting, Y line screen adaptations of travel. Okay? Directing graph centers of 3 over 6, line position of 6 over 9, set course centers of 0, 1 over travels, point lines of graph, 0, 1, set position of 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4. Set position I division lines of Fibonacci going this way, Fibonacci going the opposite location setting. So you're constantly creating portals of communication system to all travels in that line communication system all through set position. Okay, so you're constantly creating portals, right? And when you create the portal, you see the holographic structure coming to you in rotation. Coming to you, right? Through the I division, right? Because you're already created through the visional cortex of the mind. It's already created through the mind itself. So when you create that, that comes to you now through attraction. You don't chase anything. You're just seeing what you already saw. So it's a magnetic force to gravitational pull that processes communication setting, how you see everything through a holographic structure of design. It's already set in attractions. So as your I division lines the high location setting. Now, when you guys go outside, you notice that your travel in that communication system, your eyes change color, okay? And basically, when you go inside, your space line, your void is bigger, okay? When you go outside, your space line is smaller, okay? So that's position. If it's bigger, it's the process of the sun. If it's smaller, it's the process of the moon. So, and if it's bigger, it's process of the sun and the moon together, right? So you have to send the filters, the ether, the cores, the ferments, line connections through pi and travel communications through the I setting. Process indicates lines of flux. Process lines calculates setting. There's a simulation system of core that travels its point lines of graph and position your XD1000. There's the XD1000 on the platform. Center course centers, directing line ground centers and location system all through floaters. Oh yeah. So now you got a central line connection setting. You have a floater individual location system. Now you have data ports and center operation lines of your CERNs and 3 lines of signals, 6 lines of measure, 12 lines of setting. High course centers of the communication, a configured setting, a product acceleration setting. So it's very powerful when you have a direct line link in process communication. Your cataracts at the center op line centers that sets the flux at 3 centers of travel over line signal location setting and attractions. Process lines of cross reference 3 centers, process lines of 3 centers, process lines of 3 centers into Orion's belt. Travels to that communication system all through traction inside line condition setting, waving screens, detecting screen location setting in line condition system, laser attractions inside the eye line that rotates the surface location system calculation. Okay? All right? So you see it from inside traction. Okay, it's very powerful stuff. All right? So what you're doing is you're creating a hologram inside the eye line. Okay? You're creating a hologram inside the eye. Okay? Because you're looking at it straight now. And it's looking at you and you're looking at everything you're in position of, right? So when you're doing that, you're setting it up already through a portal that's already set up in tractions. So it travels out in set position to its system. Okay, it travels out, right? And then it comes back to you through attraction and setting. Okay, it's very powerful when you start recognizing what you're bringing in set positions. Okay, so you're bringing it in, but you create it through the eye line first. Okay, so it's provisional location setting and cycles, and this just gets you a closer view how you start to see structures of division locations of the eyes and set location of what you're bringing in. There's holographic structure of set design. Okay, but it's all through the eye. That's the eye itself. Okay, and you can see the clock in setting. What's the clock in system at? 1:20. So it's 1 p.m. and 20 seconds in frame. See the clock? Your eyes are clock. That's a reflection of light. Refraction of light, not reflection. Refraction of light. So you use the light course and line direct signals of light metaphors. The process communicates in setting that you use the convergent system to your CERN that operates the setting to your floaters that correlates the setting through time and measure and scale. Right? So when you see your eyes in light refraction. Okay, which is 1:20. 1 hour in frame, 20 seconds in frame. Box frame, triangulation, correlation, calculation, modified ground centers. Process line communication setting. So once your floaters become its own portals, defense lines, it processes communications back in traction. High signals, high grounds, the server locates and setting and configures the system all through travel. So in that rotations, it travels in that rotation line connection setting that changes the clock in centers of time. Okay, now it's 1:30. Okay, 1:30 p.m. Done through the eye line. Process communication setting all through tractions. Now, there's a convergent system when it comes to browser adapters. Browser adapters are above the surface to its filter line that crosses communication setting to positional levels to its firmament and rotation to its ether core and travel. Booyah. Okay, that's your browser adapter. Browser adapters are waving screens, adaptations of flux, that process communication setting, online center location setting, and portals of defense. So there's a lot of things you have to recognize to see everything of structure design into the cataracts and location system and travel, how you bring things in lines of light, refraction, location setting, and time and measure and scale. That's how you tell the time where your avatar in set location. It's 1:30 p.m. Booyah, all through light. And then it's set lines of high position location. Now it's 1:45 p.m., right? Process lines of position, now it's 10:02, 10 to 2, right? Sets core centers, line direct line connection setting, process line position locations, and all line core centers, directing line communication setting. The configure setting the dial, the sundial, change the moon, line and rotation, time measure and scale, process communication line set core centers into time measure, and that rotation line cycles, producing all communication setting to timeline centers, process the parallels, process communication in all travels. Now it's processing communication lines at 2 p.m. Okay, all through the eye line division location setting, the avatar travel communication. Okay, so there it is in circuit, right there in setting, and there's you in face recognition. Face recognition, see the eye lines, that's you in face. Okay, process indicate lines into the light bulb, watts. I know it's getting complicated, eh? A lot of fun. Okay, your watts are connected to your setting to your position locations, how you see them travel. Indirect lines and light communication setting to surface. Okay, directing ground sets eye lines of setting. Okay, process indications over line cross line connection setting a surface of process Indian position of its watts. 80 watts, 240 watts, 3,000 watts, 4,009 watts, 45 million watts, 40 cycles and location setting all through eye line rotation setting and cycles. All through the eye line rotation and set tractions. Okay, so you're seeing light or refraction, not reflection. Okay, so I'm just showing you how to go through clocking centers where the avatar is in lines of seconds, minutes, and hours, how it goes through its own lights of light metaphors going through time and all through scale. So when you look at your eyes, you're seeing light refractions of time. You see clockings of time. And that's where your avatar is, so the eye perception and set traction. So you don't get confused where you are in the mind of moderation. Okay, all through time frame. Okay, so now you understand that up close in location setting, echo and sonar. All right, you can see it in all platforms of travel. Okay, very powerful stuff in some positions. So this is so far beyond lines, and all you're doing in that line position location is putting lines of position location measure in that settings through your particle accelerations of time frame. Thermonuclear line rotation line connection setting could your acceleration of time measure and scales. Now, that way you come into how you see things in all frames all at once. So let's get into line core centers, into the eye line sequence. Okay. Let's get into that. The eyelash line centers of screens. Those are eyelash lines, right? They connect to the waving screen locations. Inhibitors over line, rotational lines at grounds, inhibitors over screen location. That's your eye lines. Process communicates to sending at grounds to surface. That process communicates to sending to floaters. That rotates to cycles and travel communication. Okay? And across in the angles, you come into line core centers, into webbing line rotations and grounds. High signal case and setting above and what's below and travel communication system. Okay? That's what your eyelashes do. So as they're creating the platform, it said travel, it said line communication, right? You're bringing it together through an line cycle. 3 centers of travel, it said travel communications. Inside setting, process indication over flux over line screen adaptations of flux over setting. Okay, that indicates the setting all through balance. Processing that, putting it all together in frame communication lines in 2-box frame. Window frame and track frame communications. Okay, so once you have that together, process communication setting all through ground centers of surface, creates it through embedded in rotation lines and ground settings and set tractions. There's your platform and lines of gridding in rotation surface and travel. There's your platform. All through the eye division. Okay? And once you create that, you create the grids above the grid line screen adaptation. Okay? Processing that line centers to change the formation lines of grounds, online signal, location sending all through conception. Okay, so now you're seeing the floor, and now you're seeing the positions of the bottom. Now you're seeing the panels of operation screen location setting and conception. Okay? Indicate lines of 1, across 2, 6, 8, 12, and 24 lines of measure and scale. Cross angles and cross line connection setting and gridding and rotation surface and travel. There it is, it's done. There's the grid. That's all done through the eye division location system, all through travel. Inside. Complicated stuff if you understand how to create the grid. Hey, you create the grid, you're on top of the grid now. Inside position, inside the eye line. It's very powerful stuff when you get the positions, guys. All through traction. Okay? So that's what you create. You created a grid. Congratulations. Very powerful stuff. Now, once you create the grid, you embedded the system to a port, data screen, data online centers, on sequence, online center, offline signal. That process communicates and sending all through configured system. You can see your all line centers, all through travel, all through mechanism location. All directions, all at once, right? Into its dimensional door screen locations. All right? Into that line centers and location. And you bring yourself through observation in. You like what you've done, right? Okay? So you're seeing everything you need to see. What you need to understand is how to create a platform, the structural division lines. Once you create the platform, you're unlooking everything in that position, all line core centers. I just showed you how to create a grid all through the grounds. So you get to process how this all works, how you structure that position first, and that positions, right? And then you create your city above it. Okay, so it's very powerful how we come in that positions. So as the eye line comes into vision like this, start with our track location lines and settings. All right, so you have the grid. So the grid's already created, okay, in the eye line division of its platforms of communication setting and travel. There's the platform, right? All right, so you have the grid lines, crossing angles, and point communication of graphs, okay? Now you create the inside line centers of the holographic structures that you want to create in line screen adaptations of flux, okay? 2 measure and scale. Process indication of 1, 2, and 3. Process locations of 1, 2, and 3 cross line signals. That communicates the system, rises the setting to its holographic structure that overrides the system all through travel. And set position to its operation. Okay? So all you're doing is you're taking from the ground, you're copying and pasting it, and you're putting on a higher level platform and set travel and set position. Okay? Very powerful stuff, guys. Seen through 2 panels operation and 3 tethers and communication lines of travel. All right? You have a direct line link. You process the indication lines. You can move this over cross line conditions of structure and make it bigger in that position of its imagination core. So there's a lot of things you can do through structure of the design lines once you understand how to see lines of right over left and left over right, and all through track communications at convergence. Setting graph line screen adaptation setting, you change the line position locations. That change the perimeters of 2 panels, 6 lines of measure and scale. Okay? Then you online the centers in a box frame and a window frame for centers that communicates the setting and configuration. Directing ground centers highlights the sequence, set a location grid over cross location lines of angles. Sets travels in point lines of graph, directing line, position lines, high set, of course, center line communication, the clock line, center location system, alter attractions. Directing panels to 3 lines, 3 centers, 3 platforms of travel. Grid line, 1 line, rotation lines of surface and traffic communications. Okay, so now you have a platform. Okay, it's complicated stuff, but it's curious in how to create it through a grid and set position of its operation. How to see things from inside and outside all at once. Okay, through light and dark all at once. All right. Sets lines of travel, direct lines of line, communication setting, all through traction. Okay. So this is just the basics, guys. Just the basics. And there's your face recognition, right? There's me observing everything. Okay. It's always a face in travel. Facing this way. All right. So I just want you to truly understand how this all works in provision, how you set things up in structure, gridding, all through traction, all through the platforms. Okay. Always have to have a bedding. This is the bedding. Okay. And then you have to understand how to get into the system location of its platform. And then you have to understand how to set up the gridding in that position through its settings. Okay. And once you have that, then you're overlooking everything you've already done through observation. You're just looking at it, right? Through its environment. So look what you created. All through the eye lines of gridding. So it's very powerful when you see inside and outside of everything you already did. Different layers, different dimensions, different space, different time. But that's exactly what it is. That's how it's set up. Okay, through a grid, processes and positions. You start with this direction first and understand how to go through light and how to go through dark and how to create a gridding of a platform and traction. Okay? Woo! Mind blown, eh? So once you get into that, it's easy to understand what's going on, right? So you're constantly understanding the gridding that you're setting up. Okay? And you can see it on all different angles too. You can be in the center operation here. This is you. And you can see it in all directions. And set positions. All through calculation. Start with our traction locations. See in the division locations and settings. 3 centers. Okay? Then you come into the platforms. Okay? Come into the platforms, right? Here's the platforms coming in, travel. Okay? Coming in, travel, coming in, travel. Now you can do it on any directional location system. So as it's seen through the eye division line connection setting, all it's doing is creating bedding of its platforms, right? You can do it any way you want in position lines of travel, where you're creating platforms, and then you create the holographic structure of what you want in set position. Okay? As it's going through the eye division in 3 cycles and 3 centers. Okay, and if you want to come to you, it comes to you. Okay, it comes to you, and then you want to move it over, so you move it over here. But it also needs another platform and travel. Okay, so you got to change the eye division lines, cross the signal location settings, convergence setting, change the bridging operation lines of light over dark, line communication, dark over light. That process communication all through tractions. You set a 3 structure design lines, there's structure location of the building. Okay, so it's true to stand, you have to have the platforms as setting, the powers as setting, the rotation lines as atmospheres as setting, and position at all levels into highways of travel. Okay, but look what you created through holographic structure as set design. Okay, but you have this starting off line centers, how to create a gridding and surface location setting first in traction. Okay, once you create that, then you come into this in platform. Okay, see, that's you in the simulation, that's you in observation, seeing everything you already done in platform. And then you can see it in our hardline signals location setting to its earth line that rotates its system of travel. Okay, so you're here in that position and you're seeing your earth over here, right? And you're seeing 3 direct signals in location system. Okay, instead of travel. Okay, so you're seeing earth in this spectrum, bedded in screen locations from afar, right? And you're seeing another direct line connections over here and position locations up closer So you've seen the structure of design, right? And what you're doing is you're bringing it in. And what I understand is stay in provision. Don't go beyond the provision, right? Because it's about understanding how you see everything's light and dark at the same time, measure and scale. The process communicates the system both through attractions. So if you bypass everything, you're inside the structure of design. Okay, and now you're evac into its intelligence. Now you're in the cities of its system. Now you're trapped inside its structure of its design. You're trapped inside. You can't get out. Okay, so you don't want to bypass the set lines of space and time. You stay in the dimensional line signal until you understand what you're doing through platforms that communicates lines of doors, and line communicates the setting all through traction. Okay, so it's very complicated how you see things, and you have to go past those 7-dimensional walls and set positions, right? This is all created through the eye-line division, guys. Very powerful stuff in travel. How you see through the simulation game of itself. How it comes into vision, and you create it through structure. And you see it in 9-division, these locations. And all platforms of communications. All directions, all settings. Okay? Very powerful stuff, isn't it? But it's amazing when you create platforms, right? Woo! But you have to understand how to create it from a grid. This is how you create a grid and put you on top. Okay, all through the eye lines. And it's all inside the eye. All inside the eye. You structure it first. You vision it, and then you bring it out in projection through projecting. Your body's the projector, and you're going through projections, right? But you have to process what you're doing through structure of design line. Okay? Especially when you start to see things coming at you. Okay? Coming at you, see? Coming at you. So you bring it in frequency, right? And then you start positions of the portals. Bringing the portals brings in the Y, triangulation equals lines of Y. What's lines of question over lines of mark? And high signal location setting, and all through lights of refraction locations into your watts. How you see time and scale, how the avatar sees its timelines of frame and position of the light's metaphors. That's how avatar tells its time, by looking through the eye line. And that's what you need to do. Take pictures of your eyes and you see the time, where the avatar is in its mind of conception, so you don't get confused where it is through its alteration of space and time. Okay? That's how you know. Now you understand that, because you're going through the eye lines. And all through tractions, all through travel, communication. Okay, how to create that structure of design. And it just gets much easier. And then once you understand how to create the platform, you're good to go. Right, so you're here. This is you overlooking everything of what you already did through creation. You created it, right? So everything you're creating through line signal is a process of past, present, and its future set travel. Sets lines of 3 centers in a rotation system to Orion's belt, past, present, and future traction. Okay, so what are you creating? A satellite communication. And when you create the satellite, you create the Wi-Fi communication. And when you create the Wi-Fi, you create the high core centers of the satellite. There's the tree. Then you set a position line to high centers, and all position locations of bushes are relays. And set position. That's how you set up line candidates, setting the tree of life, the flower of life, the record time frame, how you come into the satellites of the tree's information system, how it comes in its own satellites of modem and Wi-Fi, and detects the set location of its towers and communication of its relays of bushes, all through platform. Very powerful stuff, guys, all through observation. Okay? All right? So I'm just giving you a basic understanding how this all works. Okay? But you have to understand what's going on, is you have to come into understand locations, how to create the grids to set traction first, then understand how to come into positions, how to create the platforms, and how to come in that position, overriding everything in sequence, all through tractions, all through locations, and setting. Okay? So you're asking me, this is interesting stuff. So you say, sir, are you telling me that the actual tree itself has 3 set lines of circuits Yes, past, present, and future. Because it's linked to you through past, present, future. But past, present, future comes in one center, one conception of yin and yang, a process of communication of tango flux, line conditions, all levels of set traction locations. Balance of everything through lines of course, setting lines of space, and time scale of communication setting conversion. And it's all done through eye locations inside the eye. Okay? We are done. You have fun? Woo! Aren't you glad that's over? Now you understand how this all works. How to use the spectacles and how to see the eye division location setting, how it's all set up locations of you. And once you get into that process, you get a better understanding when you're sleeping through light and dark at the same time. And when you get into the blinking system, you understand how to go through your body through frame by frame by frame. Seconds, minutes, and hours changes everything in the clocking system. But if you want to see the time scale in the clocking system where your avatar is in set position, just look at the eye refractions of the light that's in the coordinate core centers of the center operation on the high position location that changes communication lines and configuration system all through time scale that processes communication system all through settings and travel. Okay? Adios. See you in 5.